Hello, my name is Tyler Janke. I am a PhD in history student with Liberty University. And today I want to talk with you about the importance of preserving local history. And I'm going to do this at my own local museum here at the Pettis County Museum, home of the Pettis County Historical Society. I'm going to take you on a tour of the museum itself and then take you actually to another location that this museum actively preserves as well. And so through this discussion, through this process, I want to be able to have everybody understand that it is truly important to understanding history through the local lens. Now that we're inside the museum, I'm going to take you on a tour of what the Pettis County Museum has to offer its visitors. I'm going to take you through, show you many of the artifacts that are on display, how they're preserving Pettis County history, and then later on I'm going to take you to another location where they are preserving it in a little bit different way. And then later I'm going to end the video focusing on a discussion on why local history, why places like the Pettis County Museum are so important. Because I believe that's a conversation that needs to be had in more communities all across America. As soon as visitors walk into the museum, they are met with a display over the founding family of Sedalia and Pettis County. General George R. Smith is considered the founder, and the legacy of this area was continued by his daughters, Margaret Smith and Sarah Smith Cotton. Sarah Smith Cotton specifically donated land and money to create the local high school, which is now the junior high. And the name of the high schools and junior high still carry on her name today, with Smith Cotton High School and Smith Cotton Junior High School. One of the first displays that visitors come to when they enter the Pettis County Museum is the one dedicated to Native Americans. And so like many communities, Native Americans were prominent. They were usually the first citizens to be a part of that area. And Pettis County was no different. The Otay-Missouri tribe as well as the Osage tribe were both known to pass through the Pettis County area. So on display here, you see many artifacts related to the Native American community. And so it is important that these communities, local communities, look at who was there first, who was there before. And I'm proud that the Pettis County Museum does that. When visitors round the corner, they see a display of some of the early tools that helped settle the area. See things like a double-barrel shotgun, obviously, that was part of the equipment of the time, but then you also see a number of hand tools for building houses, blacksmith, things like that. You also see things from the educated class, like a judge's mallet. You see a picture from one of the more high-class families. A cane as well. And so a lot of these artifacts here that Pettis County gives citizens, gives visitors a chance to see truly what the locals, what the individuals at the time utilized in their trade craft, giving us a look at what it was like during the time early on in Sedalia's history. In this section, you see a number of things. First, much of the women's clothing. Clothing in individual areas, not just in this country, but around the globe, they give visitors a sense of what society was like early on. And so you see dresses. Can't really see it on the camera, but you also see bonnets. Look at military uniforms, which we're going to look at a little bit more later. But this particular area truly gives visitors a step into the past. Fashion's changed over time, and even today, fashion is different depending on the region that you're in. And so looking at this particular time in history, in this specific museum, this locale, does that as well. One of the more unique displays in the Pettis County Museum is the display of what a typical home might look like. Now, this is a small display because this is a local museum, but it does provide a lot of the furniture that many middle and upper class families might utilize. Things like the fainting couch, the dresser, the picture up on the wall, the old painting, some of the clothing from early on, the typewriter. This provides visitors with an opportunity to look at what did homes look like? What did homes of common citizens in this specific area, what did that look like overall? As I previously stated, Sedalia has a rich history of sending brave men and women into conflict. As you see here on display, a number of military uniforms that were donated by local families so that people, generations of citizens, children specifically, can see the sacrifices that took place. There are also a number of unique items. You can't really see it, but back behind the mannequin is actually a Nazi flag that was donated by one of the families. And then down below, there's a sword with a letter beside it, where the sword was donated to the Pettis County Museum and Historical Society by General Douglas MacArthur. So there's a number of artifacts here that are celebrating the history, but also showing the connection at the local level that Sedalians and Pettis County citizens have had with the greater issues of society. In this display, we have one of the major industries that helped develop Sedalia, but also Pettis County, and that's the railroad. Now, there were a number of railroads that came through over time, but probably the most popular was the MKT line, or what's most commonly known as the Katy line. You see on display here a picture of the wreck that took place previously in history. You see a number of artifacts like a pamphlet, a jacket from one of the workers. You see a cigar box, some of the rail line papers and things like that, the rosters, those things like that. But then also what's unique to a lot of these local communities is that you see a number of things that they sell. These local museums thrive on donations and the selling of certain products or certain pamphlets, markers, things like that that you see over on the side. And so I encourage you to go to your local museum and see what they have there on display. Usually it's not very much. It's not any more than $1 or $2 a piece. But purchasing these things from your local museum will go a long ways to make sure that the museum stays in operation for many years to come. One of my favorite areas of this museum in particular is this area right here. Now you're looking at it and you're seeing just all of my personal stuff. There's my computer, you see my water, my coffee, my bag, pretty messy, some papers. This is where local history happens. This is where local history is studied. Pettis County Museum put together this little area for historians, both amateur and professional, to come in and be able to look through documents in comfort, to study them, to see how these moments from the past impacted the future. Most museums that I've been a part of at the local level, they have areas just like this. The point of this is to show you that there's really no reason why you can't study history in history. Local museums that is their whole purpose. They're usually staffed by volunteers who are just simply passionate about history being displayed, being promoted, being studied. Areas like this, simple areas of table and chairs, are perfect for that study. The other location that I wanted to take you to is a one-room schoolhouse called the McVeigh Schoolhouse. It's also known as the Little Red Schoolhouse. This schoolhouse has been preserved from the early 1900s. You had local business leaders and community members who came out to paint, add a new roof, and preserve the property. Myself, I mow the yard and take care of it, pick up sticks, things like that. Check on the building time to time to make sure that it is in good shape. Every year they host a reunion of many of the students that attended school here. But places like this, don't necessarily mean that much to many of the individuals in the community, but it does give people a glimpse into the past. Gives them a chance to see how far education has come over time. A chance to see where their grandparents actually went to school, and so when they're telling stories, it gives them a visual. It gives a sense of community pride, which we saw as they restored the schoolhouse further. I can't wait to take you inside for you to see the entire preservation project that took place with the Little Red Schoolhouse as a part of the Pettis County Museum and Historical Society. The McVeigh Schoolhouse, the one-room schoolhouse that you see before me, does not mean much personally to a lot of people. But the fact that this place is so well preserved, with desks, with piano, with the books, the teacher's desk, the maps, and most lovingly, the paddle. This type of local history gives visitors a chance to really look into the past. How do individuals, how did citizens, kids, become educated? How did they learn to read and write and think in order to go out into the world to become productive adults, business owners, politicians, lawyers, teachers, factory workers, everything? Places like this are so needed to just show the world how far we've come. As a teacher myself, I can't help but think, what would it be like if I taught in a school like this, with one room with ages from little to this side to much older on that side, using chalk. This is why I love history. This is why I enjoy history, studying it, preserving it at the local level. Places like this are so needed in terms of understanding where we've come from as a country, as a state, as a county, and yes, even as a city locale. Now that I've taken you on a brief tour of some of what the Pettis County Museum has to offer, I did want to take the opportunity and talk with you about the importance of local history. Local history is personally my favorite aspect of history for a number of reasons. One of the things that I really try to have people, students specifically, understand is that these broad issues in society that we often learn about, things like World War I and World War II, the Cold War, even more state level issues like elections. Historians and the general population cannot fully understand the impact or the understanding of these types of moments without looking at the local level, without looking at what common citizens are saying and thinking during this time. That's why you see many museums like this one preserve diaries, journals, Bibles, letters, newspaper articles, court documents, things like that. Those local entities, those local objects that truly give understanding to what was being said about that broad issue. Middle class, lower class citizens throughout history are often overlooked, believing that they are not educated enough to have an opinion about certain things that happen in the greater aspect of global and even national society. But those voices, those individual voices in the local community of every sector, of every location in those communities, give a greater sense of what was believed to be the general thought from that region. And that's going to change over time. Sedalia is going to be different than what's going on in Kansas City, Pettis County versus Jackson County. Missouri is going to look different with its local communities, particularly in the South, than what was happening in New York or Massachusetts. And so putting all of those local voices together just gives historians a greater sense of what is happening, what is the thought behind these major moments that happen over time. But also, preserving local history provides a sense of pride, a sense of understanding, a sense of curiosity when it comes to local communities. Sedalia has about 25,000 people in it. Fairly large, but not huge. For perspective, I grew up outside of a town of less than 500 people. But this right here gives a sense of pride. You have a past. Citizens have a past that they can build upon for the future. They have a sense of this is the struggle that took place and this is how we overcame that. Understanding what it takes to grow as a community. This building used to be a church. It's pretty full at this point. So is there another building that they can eventually grow into over time as well? But also a sense of curiosity. As a teacher myself, I really try to promote in my students about being curious about the past. What happened to get to where we are today? And they have a place to where they can explore that curiosity. We have everything in this museum from criminal documents, court documents from the 1800s, where if there's a particular crime that sparks their interest, they can go and study it. As you've seen from the tour, there's military history. How has Missouri, how has Pettis County impacted World War I, World War II? How has education impacted not just this county, but also the state and even beyond? One of the most prominent festivals in the entire country, music festivals, is the Scott Joplin Festival, which is hosted right here. Scott Joplin is an absolutely fascinating individual. He was not born in Sedalia, and he only spent a short time here. But the time that he spent in Sedalia, he developed the sound of ragtime. Now, for a lot of people, that is the first chance to see what black music sounds like. How does that music sound? That is a cultural piece, a pride piece for the black community, not just in Pettis County, but for overall. And so that sense right there, that understanding, that curiosity, that belief that we need to preserve the past to see the future is all encompassed in one right there. Local history, in my mind, is the most important history. It is why I have such a passion for it and why I'm a part of this museum as well as others overall. Thank you for spending this time with me looking through the Pettis County Museum. I hope you find it as interesting as I have, and I am happy to help in any way promoting local history, not just here in Missouri, but beyond. Thank you very much.